Hey, it's Queen Auset-Heru. How are you? And welcome to today's edition or today's episode of the Witch Trials. So, guys, this week I put on trial a really fun movie. This movie is called Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters. Some of you may have seen it because this is more recent. Now, this movie came out in 2013. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the movie, a little summary, and then I'm going to tell you the virtues and the vices. I usually do the vices first. So I'll tell you the vices and the virtues that I got from this movie. Now remember, as always, the virtues are the things that I actually like and things that witches may be able to actually do. The vices, yeah, that's the virtues. The virtues are the things I like and the things that witches can actually do. The vices are the Hollywood hogwash that we never can do, maybe in 300 years, but not today, okay? It's generally special effects. So let me start by telling you about this. Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters. Now, I've seen this movie a couple of times and I bypassed it to look at other movies. And now I'm wishing that I had watched it a long time ago because this is an action-packed movie and it was so much fun to watch it. Basically, Hansel and Gretel, you remember the story from when we were kids. Hansel and Gretel were two little kids who got left in the woods by their parents, or in some stories, they wandered into the woods. And they saw this house made of gingerbread and candy. So they're kids. Of course, they're going to be like, ooh, you know. They go over to the gingerbread house. They start eating the candy. There's a witch inside. The witch lets them in. And then she's going to eat them. Because, of course, witches eat babies, which is gross. So she's going to eat them. So they're in the house with her. They find a way to outsmart the witch and push her into the oven. And then they escape and they live happily ever after. Well, according to the movie, they grew up to be witch hunters. Because of this situation, they decided to, walk around the countryside killing witches. Now, the time period of this is like in the 1700s. It's a long time ago. So basically, it's after the printing press is developed, because they have like things printed. They have newspapers printed even. But it's way, way back. So it's around the time of the printing press. So you get to see all these newspaper articles of all of the witches that Hansel and Gretel have killed. Because apparently these witches, these evil witches, are living all over the place and just wreaking havoc on mortals. They're killing babies. They're eating them. I mean, it's really awful. These witches are really the nastiest of the nasty. These are really mean, evil witches. These are not Wicca witches. These are not the kind of witches that you would see, in modern day. These witches probably never existed. This is total fiction, in my opinion. So anyway, these witches were doing horrible stuff. Hansel and Gretel is finding them and killing them. And the movie catches up with them because they finally run across the Grand High Witch, And her whole plan is, of course, eating and destroying children. There's some kind of a equinox or ritual or something coming around, and she needs all these sacrifices. So she's going to sacrifice these poor babies. And she also needs the heart of a good witch, the heart of a white witch, they call her. And she's trying to find, or she knows one of those, and she wants to kill her and take her heart. So the whole movie revolves around that. Come to find out, Hansel and Gretel's mother was a white witch. So who's the next white witch in line? Gretel. And they never knew this. They never even knew that white witches existed. They thought they were all evil. So throughout this journey, they do a lot of fighting scenes and a lot of fun, a lot of slashing. That was my favorite part. I love the action. I love the costumes and the action. And they are able to defeat this evil high witch, and they end up going back to the gingerbread house, fighting her there, an epic battle at the gingerbread house. And at the end of it, you know, everything is restored, and they now know that good witches exist, and they continue to hunt down the evil ones and maintain the balance, you know. So I liked it. I liked it a lot for those reasons. Now, let's talk about the vices. Now, even though I like this movie has so many vices. Oh my God, it was so many vices in this movie. The first one was the evil witch cliche. Okay, so you have the evil witch with the long nose, and she's all withered up, you know, and she's eating babies, and she's just dark and horrible. And apparently dark witches, evil witches, apparently they start to decay. So their teeth and their skin, and, you know, they start to look hideous. So that's how you know a witch is a witch, because she looks hideous. But the white witches don't look like that. They look like a regular woman. So we have the evil witch cliche, which in my opinion is always been more fiction than fact. I've read very few accounts of this evil witch cliche. Now, there are dark people in every spiritual system. I know some dark Christians that are like extremely low vibrational, but there's dark people in every corner of the globe. So the evil witch cliche that we see in a lot of these fairy tales is totally bogus. Number 2, witches hating kids. I've never met witches that hate kids. I've met witches that don't have kids. I've met witches like myself that have one kid. I've never met witches that hated kids. And in several of these movies that I've reviewed, there was this big thing about witches hating kids and wanting to destroy them. And I'm like, nah, that was something that they made up during the burning times. During the real witch trials, they made that up. That was one of the things they accused midwives of. If a baby died and you were the midwife, you're a witch. And the baby probably just died from natural causes. Babies and mothers died all the time back then. But instead of just saying, you know, this is a, you know, a medical thing, they would say that the woman was a witch. And in most cases, she wasn't. So this has permeated and is in these movies. And I'm just like, nah. Witches eat kids. Witches do not eat kids. The only time I could even think of something close to this was a woman who was not a witch. She was a countess in Europe, and she would drain young girls of their blood and use their blood literally on her face like a mask, because she believed it would keep her young. Now, she was not a witch. She's actually often called a vampire, but she was a real person, and she really did this. But this is not a thing. We don't eat kids or hate kids. That's awful. Next, vigilante witch hunts. There was a lot of vigilante witch hunts. And during the burning times and during these times in Europe, there was like informal lynchings, I'm sure, that went on many times. But most of the time, it's not true. Most of the time, it wasn't these vigilante witch hunts. Most of the time, it was sanctioned by the church. I mean, it was legally done. In this movie, anybody could just get a sword and go kill a witch. And truth be told, you couldn't. She would have to be tried. In most places, she'd have to be tried. Now, in some of these small towns or places like that, because we all know lynchings have gone on even in modern times. We've heard of lynchings. But it wasn't something that the government would allow. They would have probably arrested them. You know, they would have arrested them if it was found out who it was. Back then, you didn't know who did what. But if they found out, you know, if Hansel and Gretel, you know, unless Hansel and Gretel was hired by the church or hired by the government, what they were doing would have been seen as illegal. And they wouldn't have been celebrated. They would have been jailed. Let's see. Witches using kids as a sacrifice. I have never heard of witches using human sacrifices. Usually, if a witch does an offering, it's cakes, it's ale. We give flowers, we give things that are special to the god or goddess. I'm like, for instance, Oshun, we'll give her perfume. We give them things like that. We don't tie a person to an altar and kill them. I've heard of this. I heard of it in the Bible, though. I've never heard of it in real life. I've heard people rumor about dark witches doing something like that, but I've never come across a real instance of this. I've only heard it as a rumor. And because it's people telling me that are mostly Christian, I don't really believe them because these myths came from the Christians. So I need some evidence before I would believe something like that. Generally, our offerings are not even animal offerings. Now, back in the old days, you might have seen offerings, but again, they were in the Bible. They were in the Bible time and time again. So I have only heard about it then. I haven't heard about it in any other kind of way. So it really makes me question this whole sacrifice thing and who actually does it. I've heard about ancient cultures doing it, but I've never heard of it in modern times. So I can't say that it doesn't happen, but I don't have any proof of it. Witches killing adults with telekinesis. These witches were bad, yo. I would never get into a fight with one of these witches. They could go like this and throw you across the room, go like that, you know. They were like bad. Their telekinesis was on point. They could throw things, make, you know, things fly at you. Their telekinesis was effortless and on point, and they could throw things that were huge, 200 pounds, 300 pounds. And usually when I've read about telekinesis and somebody being able to move something with their mind, it wasn't that heavy. So these witches are like on some other stuff. Never heard of this. This is definitely fiction. Hideous, rotten witches. Every witch I know, let me think about it. Every witch I know is sexy. I don't know not one witch a real witch that's not sexy. Every last one of the ones I know personally. I'm not going to say every witch is sexy, because I know that I've seen some on television or in other places and been like, okay. But every witch I personally know is attractive. And is into her, you know, sensuality, you know, some of them more so than others. But every witch I know is attractive. I've never met one of these rotten, hag looking, hair falling out, you know, teeth falling out, curled up witches. I've never met one of these. Every witch I know is normal looking, attractive to normal looking, put it like that. Flying on brooms. Everybody thinks that witches can fly brooms. I wish I could fly a broom. I would love to play Quidditch. From Harry Potter, they played it on brooms. I would love to play that game. But we can't fly brooms. We don't fly the broom. We use the broom to symbolically cleanse and sweep away negative energy. It's not something that we use to fly. That would be kind of cool, but nah, that's an old rumor from back deep. Mind control. These witches could control people's minds and make them... One lady made the guy shoot other people. Like, that's how much control she had of his mind. She was just like on some, you know, and he turned around and just started shooting the people he came with, you know. So their mind control was on fleek. If I saw somebody with this kind of mind control, I would be shocked. I would be really like amazed by it. This kind of mind control to me was more like X-Men. This is more like something superheroes do than witches. Magical fire bombs. They had some kind of like bombs made out of fire that they could throw, you know, and blow things up. And I was watching like, okay, neat trick, but nah. We don't have magical fire bombs. I guess you could make a Molotov cocktail, but I mean, anybody can make that. You don't have to be a witch to make one of those. But they had these like magical fire bombs, and I was like, nah, we don't have those people, never. Being protected by trolls is the last one. According to the movie, witches have a relationship, a connection with trolls, the big trolls. I wouldn't call them trolls. In most society, we call them giants. But in this movie, they were called trolls, but they were giant. From what I understand, trolls are little and they live under a bridge, you know? So this movie switched that up a bit. So they were huge in this movie. They were the size of giants. They could step on people and kill them. So in this movie, trolls were the sworn protectors of witches. That would be cool, but I don't have a sworn, troll protector. I wish I did. So that's another thing that's definitely a vice, because I would like one of those, but ain't nothing happening. Now, the virtues. There are several virtues. Number one, the witches do curses. You don't really get to see them perform the curse. You see a little something. So you get to see a little bit of the spell, like them doing a curse. And some witches do send out bad energy to people. Some witches feel like it is in their right, if you harm them, that they can send you bad energy. I'm a witch who's taken a vow against harming people, but I'm not the only kind of witch there are. There are many different types of witches, and we take many different types of vows. It's based on what you feel in your heart to be right. So I don't feel that it's right to hurt people, period, especially with magic. And they feel like they're justified and they can do as ye will, as they tell me. So I'm like, okay, do as you will then. And when all that karma come back, don't tell me nothing. I don't want to hear nothing. So that was one thing that I saw that is accurate. A witch will do a curse. Typically, the curse won't be as their curses were like crazy. Like the one curse made the person explode, and a curse that a real witch would do probably wouldn't make them explode. It might make them sick. It might make their hair fall out. It might make them have diarrhea. A couple other different things. Make them afraid to leave you. Hot foot. Make you to leave you. It's different things that they can do. The hot foot isn't really a curse. It's more like making them go away. But if you harm them, then it's considered to be a hex or a curse. So some of the times that does go on. I like the fact that they had white witches and dark witches. Now, some people don't like using the terms light and dark because they believe that the connotation is within race. So a dark person would be like me, darker skin. But the truth is that it's not about your skin color. It's about your aura. And some people have dark energy on their aura. Sometimes it's because they're sick, and sometimes it's because they're a rotten human being. So it's not really about race, and a lot of people attributed that, and I get into conversations with witches about this all the time, but that's not where it came from. If you look all the way back to the origins of the white or light witch versus dark witch, it wasn't about their race. So the dark witch is low vibrational. The dark witch does hexes and curses and hurts people, sometimes justified, sometimes not. The dark witch is considered to be negative and evil. The light or white witch is considered to be the opposite of that. So she's more of an angelic type person, a healer, a helper, kind of like basically just like me. So she's not going to hurt anybody. She's going to, even if somebody hurts her, she would never use magic. I'll sue you or punch you in your face before I would ever use magic to harm a person. So the white witch doesn't hurt people. She's a healer. It's the exact opposite. So you have this dynamic, and this dynamic is real because in paganism, you do have dark witches, you do have light ones, and you have some gray ones too. You have some that are right in the middle who will do a little bit of both. So I like that they put that in there because it is indeed true. rituals during the full moon. They were doing a ritual during this. It was a full moon, but it was like the moon was only going to be in that space once every 100 years or something like that. It was a big ritual. So we do rituals, and sometimes that does happen. Sometimes an event does occur. For example, Halley's Comet only happens once every 75 years or something. So there are events like that. There are heavenly events that only happen every so often, and many people will do rituals during that time because they consider it to be, in a lot of cases, an auspicious time, or some cases you don't do ritual during that time. You wait until after because it's not auspicious. It just depends on what the sign is. So we do rituals during the full moon, and those rituals can be a number of different things: prosperity, health, money, love, a whole bunch of different things. And the last thing I liked is that this movie was action-packed. I told y'all that from the beginning. This movie has so much sword fighting going on. I loved it. Now, if I had to rate this movie just on how much I liked it, if I wasn't using, if I wasn't grading Witchcraft Accuracy, I would actually give this movie a B, because I liked it. I enjoyed it. I was eating popcorn, and they was fighting and fighting the witch, and I was like, get her, and then the good witch came in and she was helping them fight. So I really enjoyed it as far as that was concerned. But as far as Witchcraft Accuracy, I only have 4 virtues here. But let me tell you how many vices I got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I have 11 vices and 4 virtues. So overwhelmingly, this movie gets an F. When it comes down to Witchcraft Accuracy, straight up F. If you were watching this movie trying to learn about witches, you're not going to learn nothing. You're not going to learn anything, because out of the 4 things I liked, only 1, 2, 3 of them had anything to do with witchcraft. So you would learn 3 things out of this movie, and you would get 11 things that were not real. So you would walk away from this movie, if you didn't know any better, you would walk away from this movie thinking that witches were evil, baby eating, and some of them were good, but the other ones were evil and baby eating and killing people and got rotten flesh, and you would be terrified of witches, and you would think they were the epitome of evil, the daughter of Beelzebub. Okay, if you just looked at this movie by itself. So it's very inaccurate in that source. That's not what you get when you come across witches. Witches come in every vibration, from high vibration to low vibration, just like everybody else on the planet. Okay? So if you want a fun movie, if you want to just watch something that's fun because you want a little excitement, or you're bored or something like that, this can be a cool movie to watch. If you want to watch something for accuracy, don't watch it. If you want to know what witches are really like, watch some documentaries on YouTube and save this for movie night, action movie night. It's definitely not something that is accurate at all. All right, guys, it's time for me to get going. Thank you for being patrons. Thank you for being here. And let's see, next Monday, I will drop another episode of The Witch Trials. And remember, if you have a movie or a web series that you would like me to review, please feel free to send it to me, and I'll watch it, and I'll tear up your movie. I'll tear up your movie too, okay? So if you have something you want me to watch, please feel free to send it to me. I would be so happy to watch it. Okay, guys, see you later.